famous, number one, desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got tons of soul, I'm a true collectible. Famous, super famous, number one, desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got t-shirts, so I don't care about no gold. Better, so much better, flipping incredible. Always on the floor, so they know that I still got it. And I never feel sorry, yeah, top of the world. At top of the world. Yeah, at top of the world. At top of the world. Yeah, at top of the world. At top of the world. Yeah, at top of the world. At top of the world. Yeah, at top of the world. When I hear him come like my fuse and then ba-bum. Later, see you later, I'm about to blow this up. You can sing or sing if you want, I know you want it. It's always kinda funny, yeah, cause you all know I'm a superstar in the sky to leave you on. Haters gonna hate, it's a proof of how they love.
Hey guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Ace Podcast Nation, the home of our originally created series, My Story. This is our third series now, and what I love about this series is no matter what, everyone has a story to tell. And Ace Podcast Nation, of course, you're home to many great shows, original series, top content, interviews featuring top guests, expert analysts, and more. My Story, like all our other shows and series, available in video format, youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. Please do give it a subscribe, click the bell for notifications, all that good stuff. And we have a few live shows every week, recorded shows, and different series. If you prefer your podcast in audio form, then you can get all of our content at the Sports Social Podcast Network, which is the UK's first podcast, all sports podcast network. Bit of a mouthful. My Stories is a unique series. It's slightly different to some of the other regular series that we do. We take our guests through their life, their career, from their upbringing up to present day, as they share stories, anecdotes, and the like. It's always interesting, the ups and the downs. But series 2 was a really interesting one. We had actors, footballers, broadcasters, authors, filmmakers, podcasters, fighters, and more. Series 3 is absolutely no different. The tagline for this series is simple: real conversations with real people, their story in their own words. And joining me for this episode, a former Premier League defender. He represented Bolton Wanderers, Oxford, Bury, Shrewsbury, Plymouth, and Mansfield. I'm delighted to welcome back to the channel, and his first appearance on this series, it is Mr. Joe Riley. Welcome, Joe. How are you, mate?
Thanks for having me on, Si. Always sounds nice when you say ex-Premier League defender. It sounds really good, that.
Got to do it, mate. Facts. That's what it is, mate. No, like I said to you just now, mate, it's just a nice, relaxed conversation, kind of looking back on your life and your career. But what I like to do, well, what we need to do really, is to start us off, is we take you all the way back to the start, and in your own words, kind of tell us a bit about you, your upbringing, and where it all began for Joe Riley.
Yeah, so I'm an only child first and foremost. So my mum and dad had me and decided that I think they decided that I was a bit of a handful early on. So no only child. All they ever knew was playing football. Really, it was only thing that I ever really enjoyed to do. Remember playing for a local team called Boostown near where I live now, in Worsley area in Manchester. So I remember playing football with the school, football with my mates, football on the street, football on the park. Football was just my life really as a child growing up, and yeah, got scouted at an early age for Bolton Wanderers. Around about 6 years old, I got scouted for Man City and a couple of other clubs off the top of my head, but it was that long ago now, I can't really remember.
So you say, like, you were all about the football. Were you getting any good at any other sports? Any interest in any other sports, or was it literally football? That's it.
No, football. That was it. I mean, we used to. I mean, going back to when we used to play out on the street as kids, and there was a family that used to live over the road, and they were quite a big rugby family. So they often bring the rugby ball out, but I was pretty dominant in saying that we had to play football. I think most of the street was, to be honest. So no, football. That was all I knew, and that was all I wanted to do. So
interesting, because you find that a lot of professional footballers, a lot of them seem to have had a choice. Like when they get to sort of that teenage years, they've got a choice of playing cricket or football or rugby, and obviously they chose football, but it sounds like you were all about the football. So how old were you when you sort of started going to sort of academy football and representative football, that sort of stuff, that like higher level?
Yeah, so first of all, I got scouted, I think when I was around about 6, but I was playing actually
that is
for the
early, isn't it?
Oh, like when you think like my little boy, he's 2.5 now, to think that in like 4 years' time that clubs are going to be potentially knocking on your door, it's a scary thing. Yeah, so 6 years old, I remember going for a trial with Bolton, but I was actually playing up for my local junior team. So they scouted me for the older age, and actually when they found out my age, it was like, oh, you know, he's too young for this age group, so we'll bring him back next year type thing. And yeah, obviously I had to bide my time. I think I joined when I was 7. I actually fully joined Bolton. So yeah, again, when 7 years old sounds really quite young, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Like we talked on the football shows many a time about academies and the different setups around the country, and they do, there's no getting away from it. They do scout kids really, really young because they don't want to miss out on like that potential superstar and stuff. Like two of my boys have been sort of in and out of academy systems since they were sort of, the younger one was in there quite early. He was about 7 or 8, and I think. In terms of football development, it was really good for him because he was playing and training several times a week with better players than he would have been, because at that age, a lot of the kids, they're just learning to play football in the Parks teams. You'll have the one or maybe 2, 3 standout players, and then the rest of them at sort of 6, 7, they are just learning to play, aren't they? Because it's their first season, really. So I think that did him a lot of good. But what it also did is it got into his head, I'm in an academy, so I'm going to be a professional footballer.
Yeah.
And they're too young at that age to understand that, one, the percentage of kids that get to be professional players are very, very low, but also the amount of work and dedication that goes into it. Not all 6 or 7, 8-year-olds have got that at that, because they're just so young, they want to play, don't they? Like, what was it like for you? Because obviously I'm talking like in the last 5 years with my boys. Like, what are you you're talking 20 odd years ago?
Yeah.
So, like, were you training like once you're in that academy setup? Are you training like a few times a week, playing a couple of games, or is it still
I think
sort of once a week?
I think we're training roughly around 3 times a week. I remember obviously training at various venues. I remember just enjoying it, to be honest. I remember going to Man City and not really enjoying it. I think half the fact was I was a big United fan and my dad was a big United fan. So, I mean, if it was Manchester United, it would have been a little bit different, I suppose. But Bolton was easy for my mum and dad to kind of get me to training, which is one of the main things. And obviously, when I was there, I seemed to really, really enjoy it. And I think if I didn't, then probably they would have pulled me away from that and let me go and, ultimately still play with my friends at the local junior team.
With the Man City thing, did you just had like a trial there, did you, or were you there like training for a while?
I was training. I remember going for like a trial, and I think they offered me a contract, but it was a bit of a decision when you're around about 8 or 9, whether I chose Bolton or City, and obviously, Man City back then wasn't the City that they are now, I suppose. And
of course, yeah.
Like I said, location wise, it was quite. City was from where we lived. City was quite difficult to get to, so I mean, everything kind of fit and pointed towards Bolton, so we ended up choosing Bolton. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like I say, as a United fan, like I compare it to like when I was growing up, I discovered sort of smoking and drinking and girls just as I was kind of getting to sort of level where I may have been able to have those sort of choices. So I never quite had those choices.
Yeah.
But like looking back, I don't know how I'd have felt if Swansea, for instance, had come in for me. Like I'm a diehard Cardiff fan, always have been since I can remember. So I feel like, of course, you're desperate to be a professional footballer, and if that's your only choice, then of course you're going to go there and you're going to try and progress, aren't you? But like, it is difficult. There's all, I think, for everyone, there's like that one team which you're like, maybe your heart can't quite be in it. And I don't know. It's different when you're an adult and, you know, it's your job and all that sort of stuff. But like, just as a kid, as a Man United fan, I could understand why you went there and didn't enjoy it, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but I can understand as a kid, like the thinking behind it, I guess. So you came up in the Bolton system from sort of 8-9 up to, you know, to Premier League, your Premier League debut. But I want to talk a bit about your time as a teenager and sort of going through that system. What were you like in school? Were you like well behaved? You know, getting your work done?
I was naughty, but I was someone that just didn't concentrate. Like I said early on in my life, football was a be all and end all, and it was in school. To be honest, I don't know what I would have done if I wasn't a footballer. It was, you know, I put that much emphasis on trying to be one. So, I mean, yeah, in school, can never concentrate. Used to stare out the window, just daydreaming about training at night, the game at a weekend. That was basically me. Couldn't wait for PE, couldn't wait for break time, couldn't wait to go home. Really, that was kind of me in school. And then, yeah, like you say, obviously just focused on football. I think that was certainly me in my early on in my life, definitely in school.
What were they like with the club? Like, obviously now these days they kind of quite strict, aren't they, with regards to you've got to do your schoolwork if you want to play, and they're quite they go hand in hand with each other, like the education and the football side of things. What was it like when you were coming through the system? Were they quite as strict on that side of it?
Not particularly. I used to have a day off school a week from around about the age of 13, 14. So yeah, for 2-3 years, I used to miss a day a week to go into training, and obviously that's obviously a big deal. I think it was a Wednesday we used to do. So, I mean, again, the club didn't really pay much attention to what I was like at school, as long as I wasn't naughty. I remember getting into trouble once or twice at school, and the only way that they used to threaten me was basically threatening to tell the football club, and that was the only thing that could really scare me, really. And to be fair, it did. I wasn't naughty, but I wasn't someone certainly who just kind of knuckled down and got on with the schoolwork, so to speak.
Cool. So what about as you got like to those sort of teenage years where kind of I guess you noticed girls a bit more, things like that. Like, was there any kind of distractions in that side of things? Like for when you wanted to go training, like I mentioned with me, for instance, once I kind of discovered girls and things like that, like my dad before he passed away, like he would have to battle sometimes to get me to go to the training on those rainy nights. And like I said earlier, like that was my problem. My problem was I wasn't committed to it whatsoever. But like, was there any periods where you were maybe a little bit distracted, or was it purely like you were, I'm going to be a footballer and this is it?
Yeah, definitely. It was, you know, even when I kind of left school early on, I was, like I said, just football. So dedicated in kind of making it and obviously reaching my pinnacle and being the best player I could be. That was my only focus, really. Obviously, I think later on in life, when, you know, I had 1 or 2 injuries, that's when I started discovering kind of drinking and the going out. But in terms of like in school, and there was never really any distractions for me. I was always someone who was just, you know, never really was seen hanging around on street corners, because I knew I had a game on the Saturday, or training on the Saturday, game on a Sunday. So it was never really something that I kind of did. The only time I'd probably leave the house was if I had a football under my arm, to be brutally honest.
I like it. And what about in terms of like the camaraderie in the dressing room and stuff like that? Like obviously you put a load of teenagers together. Sometimes they can clash. Sometimes it can be a bit cliquey. Like, what was it like for you? What was your experience of that, the sort of earlier days, like the academy days, the 16, 15, those sort of
Yeah,
difficult teenagers, I suppose?
I was always someone who was kind of bubbly in the dressing room, and I think me retiring now is something that I definitely miss. I remember hearing various stories about people that retire or walk away from the game, and they say that that was the one thing that they've missed, and that's the case with me. Even at an early age, I remember being the one who was kind of taking the mick out of someone sat next to me in the dressing room. That was the way that I kind of enjoyed it, and think people, you know, if I used to get a laugh out of someone, that was my kind of job done. Really, I think it was something that I always kind of enjoyed, and yeah, the camaraderie. We used to have some great lads at Bolton. Still keep in regular touch with some of them now. But yeah, you know, still, like I said, still remain friends, which I think goes a long way when you're talking about 10, 15 years ago, really.
Was there any points as you're sort of nearing that age of sort of leaving school, 17, 18 as well, then sort of, was there any points where you were concerned that maybe you weren't going, you know, you might get dropped or you might not get offered a contract, or were you pretty sure that you were going to sort of keep progressing?
I remember getting around about 14 and being quite kind of not the biggest, and certainly not the, you know, I wasn't someone who was kind of the strongest by no means. And I remember having a conversation with a coach at the time, and he actually said to me, "Listen, don't worry about your kind of your physical. That will come with time." And then yeah, around about 16, I remember. Obviously, it's big decision time for most 16-year-olds. You know, obviously leaving school and getting offered a scholarship. I remember my dad actually rang the academy manager, virtually when the season had started, and just said, like, "I'm not basically gonna let you faff around for 3 months. They know what decision they're gonna make already." Yeah, he rang the academy manager and said that he'd been offered a job in Wales, and if I was going to get a scholarship, he wouldn't take the job and he'd keep me at Bolton. But if I wasn't getting a scholarship, he was going to pull me away and put me in a team in Wales. I mean, he just kind of made up a big, massive lie, really, just to get a decision out of the academy manager. And lo and behold, he said, "Oh, you've got nothing to worry about. No, don't go taking the job. He's fine. Like, he's getting offered a scholarship." And I think that I actually remember that because it's such a massive, massive kind of. You know, that's the big decision point, really. I think when you're a kid growing up, it's always getting to the point and getting to a 16-year-old, and then the club making a cutthroat decision on you.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously I had good news. I remember bursting into tears, crying, going on my MSN Messenger, messaging all my mates saying that I've been offered a scholarship. I thought I was a pro. I thought I was a pro already at 16. But yeah, I remember that as clear as day, to be honest.
Jumped on AOL and connected to the internet.
Yeah,
and then
exactly,
onto the MSN Messenger.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
mate, I tell you what, that's fair play to your dad. He's sorted you right out there, hasn't he? Because you could have been waiting for those sort of 3 or 4 months, just like, will they, won't they? And every time you would have had a bad game or something, or like you weren't not like, because like one of the things which used to get to my oldest son when he was with Cardiff was that he was a goalkeeper.
Right.
And of course, as you know, if you're a goalkeeper, you make a mistake, it's a goal.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he did struggle with a bit was like, because he was so desperate to play for him and so desperate to be a footballer and play for Cardiff, he did struggle with like the pressure of it and the nerves of it. And he felt like every time he let a goal in, which maybe he felt he could have done better, he felt like, oh, they're going to drop me now.
Yeah.
Which, of course, at that point, at the age he was at and the stage he was at, if they wasn't, they were just looking at developing them and seeing when they get to 16 how they get on. But yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? But I can imagine if you had like 3 or 4 months, every sort of bad touch or bad game, you potentially could be playing on your minds, couldn't it? Like, oh, have they seen that? Are they looking at that? It's a big pressure lifted. So shout out to your dad. He's
Yeah, I mean, I think
out.
2 of the lads had already been told.
That helps.
I don't think. I mean, I remember kind of being like, well, if he's told 2 already, then obviously like they're kind of umming and ahhing with me, even though it was really, really early in the season. And I know for a fact in the job that I'm doing now, they don't really tend to tell boys until the November, December mark. And I think I was around about October. So yeah, he, like you said, he did right. I think when he found out that 2 lads had got given him, he was straight on the phone to him. Really, not happy.
Yeah, it's a good shout. But then it's a bit naughty in some ways. The football clubs generally do, not just like them, but the football clubs generally keep players of that age waiting. They I feel as soon as they know, they should tell them so that they can make a decision, decide what they're doing. Because there's obviously the other side to that coin. For the kids who don't get offered a scholarship or a contract or whatever, they've got to go and either find another football club or do something else. And I had a sports psychologist on ages ago. Her job was to work with the kids who get dropped at 16. Yeah. And she said, like, some of the kids that she had worked with they'd been in academy systems from like 6. And then, so they've been with football clubs for 10 years, go to training 3 times a week, playing games on the weekend. They think they're told as well, you're doing great, you blah, blah, blah. They think they're going to be professional footballers. And then it comes to 16. Oh no, we don't want you. Yeah. And like with you, in a lot of cases, they concentrate so much on football that they kind of abandon education a bit because they're so focused on football. But of course, if you do get dropped at 16 and you haven't got anything to fall back on, qualifications and stuff, it can be very difficult because you could feel like the mental side of that is brutal. Yeah. So, like she was saying, like, you've got nothing to fall back on. You could feel like your world's kind of collapsing in, I guess. But obviously, you weren't in that position. You were one of the, I don't want to say lucky ones, because I think, those things are not like, it's not down to luck. It is down to ability and dedication, and all those times you've stayed in when your mates have gone out and things like that. As a teenager, that's hard.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it was something that around the corner from my house, actually, we used to have like a brick, well, it's still there, but there's like a brick wall with like a goal painted on it. And I remember going out practicing on my own. So like all them hours kind of for a reason. In the end of the day, if it gives you an opportunity to be a footballer, I did it once. 1, because I enjoyed it. 2, because my dad probably kicked me out from being in the house and wanted me to play out. And obviously another reason is because I knew I was practicing and getting better. So, even when I look back now and some of the goals that I've scored in my career, they're not kind of by fluke. They've been worked on. They've been practiced on my own. And people can't. I'm not a big believer in that. You get. Obviously you are born with some ability, but you can go away and work on it, I suppose. And I'm a massive believer in that.
Yeah, 100%, mate, 100%. So, so you got your scholarship. You've had your sort of your cry and your release. And I'm guessing, of course, it's emotion of the happiness and joy of getting the scholarship. But I'm assuming also it's a bit of a relief as well, like a bit of a pressure lift that you're not kind of concerned or thinking about it or anxious about it. How did you feel when that first training session you go in as an official Bolton player, I guess?
Yeah, it's like a weight lifted. I was more kind of I was dreading kind of telling my mates at school, really, if I did get released. I think that was the big kind of pressure for me, because obviously they looked at me like someone who's going to go on and be a footballer, and someone who's only ever played football. So like for me to kind of turn around and say, well, someone doesn't think I'm good enough and I've been released, then it'd be like, it was more of a pride thing, I suppose. And that was the biggest kind of thing that I was kind of buzzing about when I said that. I raced home and went on an MSN Messenger. I couldn't wait to kind of blurt out the news. It was probably a pride thing looking back more than anything.
It's interesting, but I suppose like you're a teenager at the end of the day, still at that point. So of course that's going to come into it, isn't it? So So when you train there, once you've got that scholarship contract, are you still training like with the youth team then, is it? Or is it still sort of academy under 18s?
Yeah, I was like, so you kind of, I think I got like dipped in the youth team and then would be back down with the under 16s at that point. And then you just kind of drip up and down really. But it's quite difficult because you obviously, they've not made decisions on some of the lads. So, you know, they kind of say keep it to yourself, but it's obviously at that age, it's quite tough to keep it to yourself. And then, like I said, once a couple of you found out, it puts more pressure on the other lads. And, you know, listen, it's a horrible age. Like the job that I'm doing now, we you know, helping advise these young players. It's a tough age, but I think when they've got someone around them that have been through it, you know, I've had rejection in my football career later on, and you know, you've got to use it as a kind of fire in the belly, so to speak. You can't let it determine your whole kind of life and footballing career. So I think that's the message that I kind of try and drum into the lads that I speak to, certainly.
Yeah, it's got to be like you've got to use it as a motivation, I guess, rather than letting it get you too much. But that's difficult. You know, these are young people, young footballers. It's very difficult, isn't it? Especially if you've been at one club for a very long time as a kid. Yeah. You kind of feel like it's just the natural progression, don't you? To after a while, that you're just going to keep moving up the ages almost. Yeah. So what was your experience like after that, like in the academy, like the youth setup rather than the academy setup?
Yeah, we had so like my first, so obviously I have a first year apprentice, second year apprentice, and then it comes again down to decision time. I remember my first year going really quite well, playing most weeks for the youth team. That was when I really cemented myself as kind of knew I was going to be a right back. I'd kind of played numerous positions, centre midfield, right wing. But that was then like when they said, no, listen, there's a bit of a pathway here for you at right back. So obviously I remember just playing week in, week out for the youth team. We had you have a big competition at that age called the FA Youth Cup. We did quite well in that. We had quite a good team, to be fair. There's a couple that have gone on and done quite well, then had careers. We had people like Aaron Moy. We had a lad called Michael O'Halloran, keeper Rob Lainton, another keeper Jay Lynch, Josh Feller, who's a bit younger, who's gone on and done well. Chris Stokes, Reece Bennett. These are all lads that have kind of like played in the Football League. So I think, like statistically, we've got quite a lot of percentage of the lads that we played in that youth team have gone on and had a career, which is quite good, I suppose.
I was going to say, Aaron Moy played for Australia for like 50 odd times, haven't he? I think as well.
Yeah,
so
he was a player, Aaron, mate. He was technically.
Where were you in the? Sorry, mate, to interrupt you there. I was going to say, where were you in the kind of pecking order in terms of ability-wise in that squad? Because, like you say, like Aaron Moy is a real player. A few of those other lads you mentioned have gone on and had really stellar sort of Football League careers. Like, where were you at that point? Were you kind of one of the better players?
There was Danny Ward as well, who's obviously, I think he's at Huddersfield now.
Legends, Welsh legends.
Yeah, he'll come at me if I don't include him as well. So, yeah, probably like Danny and Aaron are the ones who have kind of gone on and had the most successful careers. I was someone that obviously played and probably impressed, but never probably was seen as someone who was right at the top, and probably would say that I would have gone on and been the first one to play in the first team. Certainly like in the first and second year. To be honest, I enjoyed the youth team manager, a guy called Pete Farrell at the time, and the academy manager, Jimmy Phillips, had a really good relationship with him. And I think it's like anything in football, when you realise that someone rates you as a player, it always gives you that added confidence. But I always kind of knew that the manager at the time was a guy called Gary Megson, and his first team staff, and they just wasn't really keen on young players, to be honest. Yeah. It was always kind of like, there was never really someone who kind of played in the first team or got given a chance on the bench. It was always like we were just kind of seen as spare parts, to be honest. We were seen there to just basically clean the boots, clean the balls and go home. That's what we was kind of seen as. So yeah, obviously like first and second year did quite well, but was never really someone that probably you'd see kind of, you know, going on playing in the first team, I suppose.
With that, so a couple of questions I got there. Like, so first of all, at that point, they were still having the apprentices do chores around the football club, and all that. So, see, I'm a firm, massive believer that they should still be doing that, because I think it's part of your football education. I think it teaches you responsibility, but I also think it stops you getting too ahead of yourself in terms of, like, how many footballers over the last 15, well, say 10 years have we seen who've got to their first professional contract and then made their debut at the end of a season and then never really done anything. And I wonder if, because that percentage is so high, I do wonder if that plays into it, that they kind of think they've made it before they have. Because if you're having to come in and do chores and clean the ground and clean the boots, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to ask you about a bit was one, I wanted to ask you a little bit about Jimmy Phillips and what he was like for a young footballer like yourself to work with someone who obviously had a successful career himself. You said you had a good relationship with him. What was it about Jimmy Phillips which kind of was, I don't know, made you have a good relationship, made you comfortable, made you enjoy playing for him?
Yeah, he was just someone, obviously, he was a fullback himself, so he kind of he always used to kind of give you extra tips. And he was just always someone that I knew kind of deep down kind of rated me. And like I say, if you feel like someone rates you as a player and has a bit of confidence in you, that kind of gives you that extra bit of belief, certainly at that age. You know, skipping forward a few years, Jimmy actually got the job at Bolton for 3 games, and to be honest, if he had stayed in the job for a longer period, I had no doubt that he was desperate to kind of play me, but at the time I wasn't fully fit, so I had no doubt that he was someone that rated me, and obviously I liked him because he liked me. Basically, it's like, it's funny when you look back at football, the best managers that you seem to work with are the ones that seem to like you. You know, the ones that don't seem to like you are the ones that you don't really like, I suppose. But that's part and parcel of the game, I suppose. But yeah, Jimmy was someone who could kind of put his arm around you, could scream in your face. I remember him doing that to me once or twice and giving me the kick up the bum that probably I needed at the time. But yeah, I think he just had a good balance, certainly.
And the other thing I wanted to ask about was Gary Megson. Like you said, he didn't really bother with with youth players in terms of his management team and stuff and bringing youth players through. Like, that's got to be relatively demoralizing for the youth players as a whole, that you don't feel like there's a direct pathway to and not necessarily just about Gary Megson, but just all managers. If you're in an academy setup, youth setup, under 23s, whatever it is now, like, if the manager is someone who's not interested in promoting youth, whether it's a Jose Mourinho or someone like that, it's got to be demoralizing, because you've got to feel almost trapped at that level, because even if you feel you're good enough, there's no clear way through, is there?
No, definitely. I mean, I remember we used to train at the same training ground as them, and like I said, we was just kind of seen as people who did jobs. We didn't even, sometimes some days we wouldn't train that much, really. We just basically do jobs. But I remember actually once there was his assistant coach was a guy called Steve Wigley, and I remember him kind of calling a few of us up for a rarity, really, in terms of training with the first team, because they were short on numbers. And I remember after training, Steve actually putting his arm around me and telling me what a good player I was. And the reserve manager at the time never really did that, and I was just a bit shocked, to be honest. I was like, "Oh my god, like, I must be all right then if he thinks I'm all right." So I remember that giving me a little bit of a confidence boost. But like I said, there was never really a pathway. You couldn't really see anyone kind of breaking in. Like I said, even like someone like Aaron or Danny Ward, who was probably at the top of the group, they was never really training with the first team. They was never basically dipped in. There was a guy. There was Chris Basham actually who had played a bit for Gary Megson, but he wasn't someone that had come right the way through the academy. I think they brought him in at like a later age, but basically, bar him, there was no one really who even trained with the first team. To be honest, so it was quite difficult to see yourself breaking in.
It's madness. What was Gary Megson like to work with? Like, was he quite quite chatty and stuff like that, or was he abrasive? I don't know.
Yeah,
he seems quite abrasive from the outside. I just wondered what he was like from the inside, I suppose.
It's quite difficult as a youngster because I'm kind of managers don't really give you the time of day, which I fully get. But yeah, he wasn't the nicest guy. I'll be honest. He was someone that wouldn't say I to in the corridor, which for
just
me
makes you feel awkward, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just like listen. It's manners at the end of the day, isn't it? I know you're a manager at the football club, but if you're making people at the football club feel welcome and wanted, then that's the main thing. And I think that was the big difference between him and someone like Owen Coyle, who was probably one of the nicest managers you'll meet in terms of like a person. And as a young player, that's what you want. You want someone who will put an arm around you and tell you that you're the best thing in the world, because that it gives you the confidence boost that you need at that age.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one as well, because like you say, it's manners as well. Like if you work anywhere, not even just a football club, if you work anywhere and you walk past a fellow employee, a fellow person who works for the same place, even though he's a manager of the football club, he still works for the same football club as you. Like just it doesn't take much to just little nod, hello, whatever, good morning.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's
basic
courtesy, isn't it?
I understand it, because obviously you don't want to be like, for them, they don't want to be seen getting youngsters to kind of ahead of themselves. And I wouldn't say he was a bad guy, but he wasn't someone that kind of ask you how he was, or he won't give you any time of day, to be honest. But I perfectly understand why, and the reasons why. It was just his managing probably tactic over anything of him as a person, I suppose. So yeah, it was certainly an interesting one, really.
We'll come back to managers in a bit, but so here you are, you're training, you going through the kind of YTS program and stuff, and you're doing the chores and the jobs. How does that go to your Premier League debut? Like your first team debut, and then your Premier League debut from that as well. Like, how does that develop? How did you find out about it? Did you know about it like way before, or?
So basically in the and obviously it was my first year being a pro. So I was kind of hoping going into the season to, like, first and foremost, I remember working really, really hard over the summer and wanted to get myself in the best possible condition. So, like, if I got thrown into the training with the first team over pre-season, which can happen, that like I'm at the front of the running, I'm sharp, I'm as fit as what I can be. So I remember really working hard on that, and I remember coming into pre-season and kind of hitting the ground running really for the reserves. And we played a couple of games in pre-season and I was really impressed. And sometimes football's about luck. Someone else's bad luck is your luck. And Tyrone Mayes actually broke his leg in pre-season. So all of a sudden there was someone ahead of me that was out injured for about 6-7 months, and obviously that then gave me the lift in the pecking order. So I actually came on in a pre-season game late in pre-season for like 5 minutes, and the manager said to me I did well. I remember doing okay. And then we, in the first round of like the Carling Cup, I think it was back then, we played Macclesfield, and I started in the game and got man of the match, got an assist, and I suppose it showed that I could basically do it at a first team level. But then I had to basically drip me in and then drip me back down to the reserves. He kind of put me in and then put me back out, which they kind of do, managers at that age. And I kind of had to wait a couple of months for my obviously league debut, but the team wasn't going too well at the time. And then I was training with him for around about 3 weeks every day and wasn't really playing for the reserves. And yeah, he pulled me in on the Thursday. I think, no, Friday, sorry, the game was on a Sunday. He pulled me in on the Friday and just said, yeah, just to let you know, obviously, you're going to play on Sunday. Just do what you've done in training, do what you've done in the reserves, do what you did when you made your debut. Absolutely no pressure. You deserve this opportunity and just kind of grasp it.
Who was the manager at that point, mate?
Owen Coyle.
Yeah, I thought it was, but I just would check. Yeah. So, were you excited knowing that was coming? Like, because that's the dream, isn't it? Be a Premier League footballer. That's kind of like what you've been working so hard for, what you've been not going out with your friends for, etc., etc. So, like, were you excited? Did you get, with all your family sort of come and watch and stuff like that?
Yeah, I didn't really tell too many people. I was just like, I suppose back then I was just focused. I was always quite a focused lad, really. I didn't really like too many distractions.
Okay.
But yeah, I remember just thinking, right, well, I hope I play well, first and foremost. But I remember actually thinking, you know what, if I don't, I'm not expected to. So I've been kind of chucked in at the deep end, and it's kind of sink or swim moment, so to speak. And obviously, if I do well, then that's brilliant for me. But if I don't, then I'm a 19, 20-year-old lad playing in the Premier League who's just kind of burst onto the scene in terms of not been come off the bench. I've just been thrown into a game. So I kind of treated it like I had nothing to lose, to be honest. And I think that was the kind of mentality that stood me in good stead for the game, really.
Didn't you get a standing ovation when you come off as well?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was. That was probably, looking back at my career, that was probably my best memory in my career, to be honest. Knowing that you played well, knowing that the team had won, and yeah, getting the standing ovation and people singing your name. There's no better feeling than that.
So at that point, were you thinking, well, this is it now? I'm going to start. I'm going to get a run in the team after Christmas, or whenever it may be, over Christmas, maybe get a few more games. Were you thinking that was the sort of beginning?
Yeah, definitely. I remember, but actually we had a week off. We had like an international break after the game, so we had no game for 2 weeks, and we had one or two kind of older heads in the dressing room. So the manager kind of said, right, we won the game 5-0. So he was like, right, everyone's off for a week. So obviously for someone like me, that wasn't ideal. Like, I just wanted to kind of I'd play again the next day if I could. So we had to wait. I had to wait they had a week off, but I went in training with the reserves, and then we played West Brom the week later. I wasn't, we wasn't great as a team. I wasn't great personally, and then on the Monday when we came in for training, I'd gone to sprint and my hamstring went, and I was out for 3 months. So it was kind of, I experienced the highs and lows in football all within kind of 2 weeks, really, I suppose.
At a young age as well, I suppose, as well. That's you've got like the ultimate high as well of making your Premier League debut, and then being out for 3 months. Was that your first sort of long-term injury?
It was.
Several months.
I'd never been really up until that point. People probably laugh when they hear me say this, but I was never really injured. Like, I was someone who was just kind of, never pulled a muscle, never broke. I remember breaking my nose actually, but never kind of as injury prone as what I was later on in my career, certainly. So,
how did you cope with injuries back then? Like at a young age, like were you someone who could switch off and kind of relax? Or were you kind of frustrated because you weren't able to?
Frustrated because, like I said, football was the be-all and end-all for me. Certainly at an early age. And then, obviously, I was still probably on a high playing in the Premier League. And back then it was kind of a bit more known to kind of go out. And I lived on Manchester's doorstep. So it wasn't the easiest thing to kind of stay in when you wasn't playing. I wanted that kind of release on a weekend sometimes when I was injured. So yeah, it was tough being injured, but like I said, like 3 months it kind of flown by really, and I kind of got back fit, and then I kind of had to bide my time really in terms of I actually never played a league game for Bolton again, which is pretty kind of strange really when you can kind of consider it, that I'd done so well in my debut. Not so great, I'd admit, the week after, but no one was. And then played virtually, I think, 7 or 8 cup games after that. The only game I missed was actually when Muamba went down with his heart. And like I said, I felt like I did well in all the games. So to not obviously get back in the Premier League, which Owen Cole kind of pulled me and said that, listen, we're not willing to kind of put you back in because we're in a relegation battle, so to speak, and we don't want to like expose you to it, but just be ready, and if you're called upon, you're called upon. So yeah, it was difficult. I think it was difficult because of the position that the club was in.
Yeah. You mentioned Fabrice Muamba's obviously he collapsed during a game against Spurs, wasn't it? What was the atmosphere like at the football club, sort of at the time and afterwards? Because that must have been quite strange, quite harrowing.
Yeah, it was awful. Because I remember we came in like 2 days after, and Fab was actually in I think he was still in hospital, but we actually thought he died. Well, he did die. So. I mean, obviously, I wasn't at the game. It was a game that I missed. But he, it was basically. I remember coming into training. Lads were just staring at the floor, staring at the ceiling. No one spoke. It was quite a bubbly dressing room what we had. But yeah, it was tough because no one kind of knew what kind of state he was in and whether he was going to make a full recovery. To be honest, that was as deep and as bad as it was.
Yeah, scary stuff. Well, did you watch that? I know you said you weren't there. Did you watch the game? Were you watching the game?
Yeah, I was watching it. I think it was ESPN back then. Actually, I was watching it at ESPN back home. So again, it's when one of my mates was on the bench, Josh was on the bench, and I remember texting him when he got back into the dressing room, like what's going on, mate? And he was just like, oh, mate, I think it's really, really bad. Like, so it was scary, obviously, like your teammate going down, and then I think it was the first time I'd ever heard of something like that. I think it was the first time probably anyone has really. And like I said, it was just scary, but thankfully, the medical team, obviously did what they did, and he made good recovery. It's actually interesting. The doctor that was at the club at the time, a guy called Jonathan Tobin. He's at Wigan, and apparently the same happened with Charlie Wyke in training the other day, and he did the same with Charlie Wyke as well. Which,
Jesus,
I mean, fair play to the doc. Like, he's, for that to happen to someone once, never mind twice. It can, but it shows how good he is, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a scary thing, mate. There was, I believe, there was like a cardiac specialist in the crowd as well, wasn't there? I think who had come down, and I remember seeing an interview with him. But obviously, and like we've seen a few recently, a couple of players, collapsing recently. We've seen obviously Christian Eriksen in the Euros as well, and I think as well as that, the importance of having doctors and stuff as part of the teams, as part of the backroom staff anyway, but also having things like the I forgot the bloody name of them. The
defibrillators.
That's the one. Yeah, my mind just went completely blank then. The importance of having them. Like me and Rodri were speaking on, I think it was last week's show actually, saying like that we think it should be in the rules that any football club that hosts football matches, where there's a crowd, doesn't matter whether it's a crowd of 10 or 75,000, should have to have a defibrillator on site. It should be within the rules.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
hopefully, I really hope it becomes something which is part of the rules. So obviously, I was trying to think then, because you said, like, I think Fabrice Muamba was the first, I think, in this country to suffer that sort of issue. Certainly, you know, on national TV and stuff like that as well. But I think Mark Vivian Foe, who obviously played for United for a short period, he did he go to United or didn't he? I don't think he did in the end. Did he?
He
went to City. But yeah, he died in 2003, and there's been a few around like Europe and stuff who've unfortunately collapsed and passed away. It's a scary thought because, like, you guys, like, in terms of health and fitness, you know, you train so hard and you're so fit as a professional athlete that I think it really worries people, doesn't it, when you see a footballer go down in that way, just because of you associate professional athletes as being so fit, I guess.
Yeah, definitely, I agree.
So kind of with that, Owen Coyle left Bolton, and I think it was Dougie Freeman, wasn't it, who came in?
Yeah, Dougie came in, yeah.
How did you feel when Owen Coyle left? Because it sounds like you had a relatively good working relationship with him. He was quite approachable. Was there any?
Yeah.
Did you know Dougie Freeman from before, or was there any sort of relationship there?
I didn't know. He was someone that I'd heard was really prominent in kind of playing young players. So I was excited for him to kind of get the job. I remember hearing an interview on the radio that the chairman had done, and he said that we've got one or two really, really good young players at the club that have come through the academy system, meaning probably me and Josh. And he said, you know, we're dying to get them into the club, into the team. And Dougie's been basically, he's got a proven track record of doing that. So obviously, like, I was filled with confidence because under Owen Coyle, he wouldn't. We kind of got relegated. He's still kind of stuck with experienced ones that had done well for him in the past, which I firmly get. I felt like I was ready. I think most people at the time felt that I probably should have been playing, to be honest, or given an opportunity at least. And yeah, I found it tough when the gaffer, when Owen Coyle got left the club, but I was kind of excited at the same point by someone like Dougie coming in with a proven track record, because I wasn't playing and they wouldn't let me go out on loan. I had quite a lot of interest from a few teams in the Championship and top League One teams to kind of go out on loan and play. And for me at that age, that's all I wanted to do was play. I wanted to play for Bolton first and foremost, but ultimately I just wanted to play first team football. I felt like I was ready, and I think that was the general kind of consensus that I was. So yeah, obviously it was difficult when he left, but obviously I was excited by Dougie as well.
So you went out on loan to Oxford United.
Yeah.
You just mentioned there that first and foremost you wanted to play for Bolton Wanderers.
Yeah.
Was that a difficult decision? Did you have was that when you had your first serious injury? Was that just before the Oxford thing, or was it?
Yeah, so basically Dougie come in, and to be fair to Dougie was willing to give me an opportunity. He pulled me in his office and said, "Listen, I'm going to give you a run in the team." Just before that, actually, when he first came in, he said, he pulled one or two of us in and said, like, "Listen, it was when you could do month-to-month loans, so you could go on loan for a month and come back." And he said, like, "Listen, we've had one or two inquiries. There's been one inquiry from Swindon under Di Canio about you. Do you want to go for a month?" So I remember just like being like, "Well, what do you think?" And he was like, "Well, I think if you go out for a month and come back and having had played 4 or 5 games, it puts you in a good position to come here and play." I think Swindon were like top of League One at the time. And yeah, I went down there, mate, and it was an absolute shambles. Like, he made me do it. I was only going for like 4 weeks, but the secretary woman, when I got down there, she said to me, "Do you realise what you're getting yourself in for?" I said, "No, why? What do you mean?" She said, like, "I've not had a day off for 6 weeks because we've not won for the last kind of 6 games. We've only managed to get a few points, and obviously we were at the top of the league, so the gaffer's losing his head." So I was like, "Oh wow, what have I kind of got myself in for here?" And yeah, I went down, and basically I had a meeting with an Italian guy who didn't speak a word of English. He kind of like I don't even know what he did really. I'm not sure. And then I got a phone call off Bolton saying to come back. That they basically agreed the loan, agreed the wages, and then when they were down there, they tried to pay less of the wages. So it was a strange one anyway. So I obviously came back, and then Dougie said, "Bide your time, I'll put you in." He put me in for a game. I broke my foot in the game, so I had to come off. And then come back from that. That was the end of the season. By the time I got back, I was out for 6 months with that. And then first pre-season game that I played, I did my cruciate, my left knee cruciate. So in total, I was out for probably around 18 months. So, you know, I'd had a frustrating year the year before in terms of like I didn't really get many minutes, and obviously I spent the second half of the season out injured, and then I had a whole season out injured as well, which, you know, was just kind of knocked me for six, to be honest. I didn't know whether I was gonna be able to kind of get back and play. It was, I think this obviously when you do cruciate, it's a serious one. And yeah, I managed to get back fit, and then that's when I knew that I needed to go out on loan. Like Dougie pulled me and said, "Listen, you need to go out and just play every game. I can't guarantee you that here," which I understood. It was still in the Championship, so yeah, I went to Oxford, and to be honest, that was probably the most enjoyable time in my career, footballing wise.
It's what about, like you said there, you had like a season out for someone who's still relatively young at that point, still young at that point. What was that like on your mental health? Because you've made it, you know, we've talked about already, like it's come up how all about football you are. You were so focused on football and succeeding and the one-track mind. But then suddenly you're not just out for a couple of months with a hamstring. You've got an extremely serious injury, which I'm assuming had surgery and you know, rehab and all these things which come with it. Like, what sort of toll does that take on your mental health? Was that something you considered at the time as well?
To be honest, I cried like because I broke my foot before it. I was kind of used to being, you know, kind of in the treatment room and injured, and obviously when I had another injury, I always felt that like that foot injury kind of led me up to being out for a year. It was kind of like a taster of what's to come. So I remember crying for a week. I remember getting the news, going home in my car, crying for about a week, to be honest. But then slowly, but getting my head around it and like using it as a bit of a kind of, you know, something that, you know, a target in my head to try and come back from this big serious injury. There's been lads at the football club that had already done that and come back, so I kind of, you know, clung on to hope from them that you can come back and still be of a similar level. I don't think you ever quite can get back to the level that you was at. But I love the physios to the, you know, the physio room actually was kind of got me through the year. We had the best laugh in that treatment room that I've ever had. We used to take the mick out of each other every day, me and the physios, and then, you know, the lads that were injured. It was just the camaraderie basically got me through the year, I suppose. And yeah, it was like a meeting point for everyone. When they used to come in, they used to slam the bags down and then come into the treatment room, and everyone just kind of like a free for all, really. Everyone used to take the mick out of each other, so it was great.
Yeah, that's sort of, for lack of a better word, I hate the word. In fact, that banter is what gets you through those tough times, mate, isn't it? It's those relationships which carry you through those times, which would, if you didn't have it, would be a lot more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely, mate, definitely.
So you've had the injury, you've had a year off from football, then you've gone on loan.
Yeah.
And that there is, would you say that's fair to say that's where you started to really play regular sort of first team football?
Yeah, I think it was just a case of me going down there, first and foremost, enjoying it, because the manager was without doubt the best manager I had in my career. The Lincoln manager now, Michael Appleton, great manager. You know, kind of played me to my strengths in terms of like able to get forward and cross balls for fun, which is what I used to be able to do. But yeah, I enjoyed every minute of it, and I needed to kind of prove to people that like, listen, I can play every week. I think that was the be all and end all of me going down there for like 6 months, was to kind of shirk away anyone's kind of thoughts that I couldn't basically handle professional football, which at the time I didn't really see as it like that. I just seen as it like basically try to get back to the level where I was at before. But probably, you know, at the time it was more me kind of showing people that I can actually stay fit.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because like obviously how you view it now is probably different to how you viewed it at the time. Because obviously you've got a bit more experience and you're a bit more knowledgeable and stuff like that, and you were younger. You know, that's natural hindsight, isn't it? You say like hindsight's a wonderful thing, but you know, you did play. What did you? How many play? You played like 20 odd games for Oxford.
Yeah.
So how did the move go for? So you went to Bury. Neil Lennon's the manager at Bolton at this point, and you've gone to Bury. Like you've said a couple of times, you really wanted it to work at Bolton.
Yeah.
How was the decision? How did it come about for you to leave?
So Neil Lennon obviously taken over when I was down in Oxford, and my loan was coming to an end, and I was at a crossroads really. To be honest, I was happy at Oxford. I would have stayed. I liked the manager, but I wasn't really sure whether the squad that we had would have kind of been enough or improved enough for us to get promoted, because I wanted to play as high as I could.
Of course.
So I went back to Bolton for a week to kind of see what they were saying about everything, and he pulled me in. Just basically said the team had been doing really well. It's difficult for me to drop anyone. I don't think you're going to play every week. You can bide your time there and get given a chance and hopefully stay in, but I can't guarantee that. And obviously, I had 6 months left on a contract, and I wasn't really kind of ready to throw all that hard work at Oxford out the window to kind of wait for a chance. I felt like I'd done well enough down there to kind of come back to Bolton and certainly be in the reckoning. But Bury was on the doorstep. It was a club that was, from the outset, you know, looking in, looked like a financially very, very stable club. Good squad, you know, competing at the top end of the division, and more the location more than anything was the main kind of pull to me. So yeah, I ended up signing for Bury.
Interesting. Was that a big thing for you though? Like Bury being relatively close to like Bolton and Manchester and that, or if a different club with maybe higher up or whatever had come about, would you have gone there? Or were you
I
still
had a couple of options in the league above, and I had Hibs in Scotland as well. So obviously, like from me proving that I could stay fit, the more and more clubs actually came interested. So, but yeah, I kind of met my missus, to be fair, when I was kind of down there, and she was from Blackpool. So
okay.
I didn't really at the time, I could, like, you know, for me to kind of say, "Oh, come on, you're moving to Scotland, or you're moving to Oxford."
Was it quite early days in your relationship at that point as well? Was it?
Yeah, it was early days. I didn't really want to kind of throw everything away. Really, I was like,
it's a lot to ask in it as well. Early days to
it
go,
was. It was.
We're going to Scotland.
And to be fair, the Bury move worked out. It certainly worked out.
Yes, it did. Yeah. I just wondered if it was like a Manchester thing. Because you know, some people have kind of, they don't want to move too far away. Home. So I wondered if it was if you were kind of stuck. I was on the area.
I didn't want to be too far away from Manchester. Definitely not.
You mentioned your missus.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about her. How did you meet her?
Night out. Yeah. Offered her a drink. She duly obliged, and then the rest is history, I suppose.
Nice.
Quite. I mean, it sounds. It's like a bit of a dying breed that you meet your missus on a night out and you offer them a drink, and then you know it goes from there. It's all kind of seems done over the phone now, I suppose, isn't it? But
yeah. I was going to say you might have been one of the last to do it that way, mate. because
seems so. Yeah,
very different now. I met my missus.
Yeah.
She worked in the local pub. There you go.
Romantic.
That's it. I spent too much. I spent too much time in the pub, and she spent too much time in the pub. And that was the rest. Like you say, the rest is history. But
Yeah.
like, was she supportive of you, like football wise and stuff? And when you had difficult periods in your playing career, what was I guess I'm asking them, like, what were the early days of your relationship like? Because I'm assuming for partners, it takes a while to get used to being a partner of a footballer, because it's not like a job like any other, is it?
Yeah, she was willing to move basically anywhere with me, but like I said, it was the poor, like being all Manchester around my mum and dad. I'm quite close with them. So yeah, it was more kind of, she was so supportive. She always has been. Like, she's got to be basically to move down to Plymouth with me as well. She's got to be supportive. So yeah, she's always been someone who's just kind of stood by my side and kind of been my rock, I suppose.
Behind every great man, mate, they say, innit?
It's the truth, certainly with me.
So you, like you mentioned, you had a good period at Bury.
Yeah.
You got promoted, didn't you, to League One? Was it?
Yeah, we got promoted to League One.
Mate.
That was again another massive highlight. You know, obviously getting promoted and yeah, League One's you know, I see it as, you know, more of a probably a respectful league. You can play some really really big clubs in League One, so it's a good level of football when you watch it. So yeah, was delighted to obviously first and foremost get a promotion.
Yeah, you look at some of those teams in there now, mate. It's unreal. It's unreal, mate. And I think it's we talk about a lot how difficult the Championship is to get out of. I think League One is becoming like that as well, because there's the amount of money that some of those football clubs have got, and still struggling to be able to, you know, get out. And because you've got teams coming up like Salford as well, who've got, you know, a load of money which they can spend. They could spend more than any other football club at that level. It's crazy in some ways, I gotta say. So from Bury to Shrewsbury, mate, how did that come about? Was that like something you wanted, they wanted, somewhere in between?
A bit of both. I got wind that the club wasn't really as financially as stable as what you kind of thought. You know, and the club had said to me that they wanted me to move on. There was 6 or 7 of us that started most games for Bury that they said the same too. So I was never gonna like overstay my welcome. I enjoyed my time there. The last 6 months I didn't really enjoy it, but other than that, I loved it. I loved, you know, Dave Flitcroft, the manager. I loved playing for him. Good guy. But yeah, obviously when you think it's time to move on, and the club think it's time for you to move on as well. Obviously, I'm not going to stand there.
Not much you can do, I guess. Like once they say,
and I knew I'd done well enough to kind of attract interest from maybe the Championship or definitely in League One. So I wasn't kind of like, oh, this is my only option. I was like, listen, if you don't want me, I'll go to somewhere where it does want me. That's always been like my kind of feeling in football, I suppose. So it's nice to feel wanted, and obviously Shrewsbury at the time, there's a few clubs, but Shrewsbury was the one I picked. And yeah, great club, that loved it. I had more lows than highs there, injuries, you know, obviously losing the baby. But in terms of a club and people at a club, can't speak highly enough of it.
Tell me a bit about that, mate, as much as you're comfortable with, like just the sort of impact that had on you. Because look, it's something which, you know, unfortunately is something which a lot of people go through. Doesn't make it any easier.
No.
It's like, it's a horrible thing. Like, talk to me a bit about that period of your life in general, because to me, I think it's remarkable that you were able to continue playing football and being good at it. Do you know? Because I know myself, like how difficult these situations can be, and how the last thing you want to do is go to work, and have to speak to people, and you know. But yeah, tell me your experience of it.
Yeah, so obviously, like it was tough, but I think my concern was more for my. Obviously, you've got to deal with a loss, so you have to grieve. The club gave me some time off. My concern was first and foremost was my wife as well, making sure that she was all right. It was something where I look back and I can't really remember, to be honest. Obviously, it was that kind of that emotionally draining. It's hard to kind of think back to that time, really. But it was a time where obviously we had a lot of support around us in terms of our family. Both got really, really good families around us, so that was important. And yeah, more dealing with the loss initially, and then slowly but surely going back into football after a couple of weeks. And the group of lads that we had there that season was really, really good. I had a good car school going into training. We used to drive in with like 3-4 of the lads, and they were brilliant. And yeah, no one really asked me about it, to be honest. I think, I don't know whether the manager pulled him in and said, listen, like, he's going to come back in, but basically just, if he feels comfortable talking about it, then talk about it, but don't go out your way and ask him about it. I'm not sure what the script was with me coming back in, but I kind of seen going into training as the release in the end. Because obviously I think if I would have sat at home and overthought things, it would have been a lot more difficult than actually just kind of, I felt like that's what he would have wanted me to do. He would have wanted me to kind of get on with my life, so to speak, and do him proud. And that's, with that, even now in what I'm doing, he's someone that I want to like kind of him look down on me and go, like, I'm proud of my dad. You know what I mean? I didn't want him to kind of think that I'm someone whose life stopped just because of what's happened. It was something like, kind of. And I think me and my wife was both the same in terms of that. It was kind of like, listen, it's what he'd want. He'd want us to kind of get on with our lives, and it's what we had to do.
Yeah, 100%. It's you mentioned you had like a lot of support from your families and stuff. Was there support there from the club or the PFA or anything like that side, like from football?
I wouldn't say the PFA. The PFA was, no one really reached out to me, which is kind of a bit, listen, I'm not someone who says that I was in a mental rut, but if I think it would have been nice to have someone reach out to me and just ask me if I'm all right and I need any support. I didn't have that. The club was really, really, the club and the manager was very good. Obviously, giving the time off that I needed. So what he said to me, listen, if you're having a dark day, don't think that you have to come into training. You can stay at home. If your wife's having a dark day, don't think that you're coming to train. You can stay at home. So I think that kind of support, basically, that I had there backing of whatever I chose to do, and depending on how I felt, was good. And I think looking back, I 3 months down the line after what had happened, we played in the playoff final, and then I actually got told off the club that my contract was not being renewed, which I didn't really want it to be. I wanted a fresh start, but it just shows basically the football industry that it is what it is, and kind of that what you've gone through, you've kind of give your life to this club and played through some bad times, but you have to move on, and I fully respected that. I wanted to move on myself. I felt like it was the right thing to do, but it probably wasn't, to be honest. I probably would have stayed in a more secure environment rather than uprooting my family and moving down to Plymouth, to be honest.
Yeah, it's quite far as well, isn't it? It's a bit of a difference. Look, I just on that as well, I was going to say the fact that, and this is, to be very clear, this is me saying that, not Joe.
Yeah.
The fact that the PFA did not reach out to me is shocking. And what is the point in having an organisation like that, which is supposed to be there for footballers? And obviously, we've seen footballers over the years have issues with mental health and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
We've seen the worst cases of that with addiction and other, more serious things, with like deaths and suicides and things.
Yeah,
Like, this is a real thing.
yeah,
And it's something which is it's a bit of a bugbear of mine in that, like, it'll be trotted out by, like, whether it's the FA or whoever, big companies, mental health, it's okay to talk, blah, 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 blah. But then actually when something happens which could have and probably did have an effect on your mental health and could have sent you down a bit of a spiral,
yeah,
the PFA of all, they didn't just pick up the phone and say, "Hi, Joe, we heard what happened. Are you all right? If you need to talk, there's this is available."
yeah,
Like, I find
yeah.
that shocking.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I looking back, I did. I mean, I was lucky, like what I was saying, that we had a good family support system around us. But yeah, to be honest, even now it's like, even the courtesy of just a message, just a text message, just an email, would have gone a long way. But yeah, like I said, there's nothing worse than probably what I went through and what my family went through. So if there's anything that can kind of trigger mental health off, it's probably something like that. And yeah, it was a tough time, like it would have been for everyone. But I think when obviously something like that happens, you do, even now sometimes I think back of the people that message me. I honestly do, and that goes a long way. I think back to the people that was willing to kind of put time out and speak to me, and you don't forget them people. They're the people that you hold in high regard.
100%. The people who were there for you when you need it most, mate. Like,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
like, very, very quickly, just on some of the stuff which I've been through. Like, I don't see some of the people who I was close to in my younger days, because when I really needed them, there was nothing. Like, I had like a life-changing thing, life-changing injuries and health problems, and they all just disappeared. Now,
yeah.
luckily for you, in your situation and what happened to you and your wife and your family, like, you had family support, you had support from your football club. Not
Yeah.
everybody gets that.
Exactly. That was my main point, really.
And not everyone's got close family, lots of family. Not everyone's part of a big family. And I just think, from that point of view, I would like to think that in 2021 maybe they've got better, they've learned lessons and things like this. But yeah, it's not. I don't think it reflects great on them.
No, I agree.
But look, you made the decision to go to Plymouth. You just said just now, with hindsight, maybe uprooting the family and moving down there was not the best move. Do you think you made that decision with kind of a bit of emotion as well, in terms of you wanted to get? I know you wanted a fresh start, but did you also want to get far away, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think, just for example, the house that we live in now was the house, like, we had obviously Leo's bedroom up there as well, and at the time I was just like, right, we need a fresh start. But like I said, it was only 3 months after it happened, so I think looking back, I wasn't in no way near the right headspace to make a big call and big decision like that. I probably wasn't thinking straight for 6-7 months after it, to be brutally honest, when I look back. So, I mean, listen, Plymouth's an absolutely amazing club with brilliant people and brilliant fans, but the headspace where I was at was just never right to kind of go and live 4 or 5 hours away from our support system, our families. I think the same was for Kaylee as well. We loved it down there. Obviously, it's a beautiful part of the world. We're actually going down tomorrow, but it was a time where probably if I had my time again, would have made a different choice probably. But it was a club where, I look back and I say that I play for a great football club, which not many people can say. I just wish it was at another time in my career, really, where they would have probably seen a different version, a better version of me with a better headspace, really, more than anything.
But I think the majority of people could understand, that and understand that. And I know Rye, who watches the shows, is a Plymouth fan. He shouted you out, didn't he? And when you came on the show with Andy,
good guy,
and he's top bloke. He speaks exceptionally highly of you and your time at Plymouth. So I think it's one of them, and maybe you feel like you could have done, or they didn't see the best version of you.
Yeah.
But you still did all right, I reckon.
I'm a biggest critic. I like, when I'm not one of these players that has a bad game and then turns around and went, I thought I was all right today. I didn't think it was me. I'll always hold my hands up and say that I was rubbish. Like, for the first 4 or 5 months when I moved down there, I looked like an alien, mate. I was that bad.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I was that bad anyway. But then, I kind of turned it around and got in a better kind of headspace, and then I did all right.
It's understandable,
and then
though, mate, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Didn't do too great again, so
you'd have
what
to.
It is. What's that, mate?
Yeah, I said it's understandable. Like, I don't think many people would be able to just kind of switch off what you guys had been through.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just it kind of is, like you said, it is what it is. But so you had a short stint, a couple of seasons at Plymouth, and then you moved on to Mansfield. Was that kind of was that due to you wanting to get away from Plymouth because it was so far away, or was it just because you broke your leg whilst you were at Shrewsbury, didn't you? And then so that was that his second serious injury?
That was my second one. And I think, to be honest, if I look back, I was never the same after that. I was never the same after my first cruise ship, to be honest. Like, I always kind of say this, that I was never as quick, never as powerful, never as I just wasn't the same player. I think you're not going to be after having a year out. But certainly when I broke my leg again, I didn't feel great. And I think that, I always kind of backed myself to kind of, even after the first cruise ship, to kind of get to back into the Championship. I felt like I could have done that. But certainly after breaking my leg, it was it was just, for me, to be honest, it was just more about making a career and having a career. At League One, respectful level of football. Going on to the move to Mansfield, I kind of wasn't playing for a couple of months at Plymouth, but whenever I played, basically changed the formation. I played a wing back, and I didn't really like it. I felt it just felt out of the comfort zone, to be honest, whenever I played.
Okay.
Like, the team was we had a good team, but I just felt like it just didn't really suit me. And obviously, location wise, when you're down there and you're not kind of enjoying it, and you're not playing to as well as what you could have, and obviously when I did play, felt like I was playing out of position, so to speak. So it was just a move that I needed to happen. I needed to get back home. I needed to be, like I said, closer to family again. Mansfield was about an hour and 20 minutes, so it kind of fit the bill, really.
Do you know what I find a bit interested about that, mate? Is that from what I remember of watching you play, and obviously what I've watched of clips and stuff more recently, your kind of attributes seem suited to a wing back position.
Yeah,
because you're quite quick, quite powerful, and I find that really interesting that you didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, it was just
on paper, your attributes look suited to it. Yeah, but also you said you didn't feel the same with your power and speed
after the leg break. I think, if I played that, for Lowy in that formation when I was younger, it would have suited me. But like I said, after the leg break, I was never as quick. Didn't feel like I could go and take people on. It was something that I just didn't feel like I didn't feel as quick, to be honest. And like I said, if it was early on in my career, I reckon it was something that would have suited me. But they wanted you to play high and wide, and basically like a winger when you had possession. And to be honest, like I said, it just didn't. At that time of my career, it just didn't suit me. I just wasn't wasn't in a great place confidence wise, and I've always been someone who, if I'm not confident, I don't really seem to play well. I think that goes without saying for most players, really.
So, 2020, January 2020, you've moved to Mansfield. You said like it made sense for the the area, everything. It was like the right decision, everything. Yeah. When you've left Plymouth and you've made that move to Mansfield, like where's your headspace at then? Are you kind of coming to terms with things and feeling better mentally, or are you still?
Yeah, I felt like I was back nearer home. So my family, we had my son when I was down in Plymouth as well, and like we felt like he grandparents would want to see him, and that was a big factor really. But Mansfield kind of again good club, one which didn't really start the season well, but they had a good squad, and they just appointed the new manager in Graham Coughlin, who's a real, someone who we got on with straight away. Still have a good relationship with him now. And yeah, like when I spoke to him and when I found out that they were interested, it was one that I was dying to kind of happen. I knew where they wanted me to play me, how he seen me, how he rated me, and again, yeah, I just couldn't wait for that to happen, really.
You've made the move to Mansfield, close to home. Things are looking up.
Yeah.
Off the pitch, like everything's going well.
Yeah.
But you only ended up playing 6 times for Mansfield.
Yeah.
Talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, so obviously like COVID hit when we were down, when I'd signed there, and I'd only actually signed till the end of the season, so I was a bit like, oh God, what's going to happen here? But like I said, the manager liked me that much that he'd give me another year. He'd seen enough from me in the 6 games that I played that I did well. To be fair, I did. And yeah, offered me a year's contract, and then obviously we had a big break with COVID. Come back in for pre-season. I think it was like the 3rd week of pre-season. Me cruciate on my right knee, which reluctantly has ended my career, as obviously happened, and like I said,
was it the same knee, mate, as before?
No, different knee, yeah, different knee. So like
one.
Left one when I was younger, and then obviously right one.
But apparently it's quite common, isn't it, for once you do one, for the other one to go because of the extra
yeah,
it's quite common, extra strain you put on it.
It's quite common, but not in the time frame that I had after mine. It was basically like 8 years after mine when I did it. So I think they tend to say if you're going to do one, then when you come back, you are more likely straight away to do the other, because obviously
right.
You load from your left to your right to your left. It's quite different. So I think it was a shock more than anything. I think the shock of me doing my cruciate, I remember just couldn't get my head around it, to be honest. It was like, I felt like in a good place, felt fit, felt strong, felt obviously good coming into a good season, and I just couldn't wait to get going, really. I was coming up to like 28. I just felt like this could be a season where I'll probably most enjoy it, and stay fit and stay healthy and stay playing. But obviously that got cut short straight away, really.
Yeah, it must have been terribly, terribly difficult for you. Like, what about so for people who don't know, like, how, first and foremost, when you've done your cruciate, like, how painful is it in the action of doing it?
Yeah, it's painful. It's like I said, it's a shock, but because I'd done my left one when I was younger, I remembered the same kind of feeling. So I did it, heard the pop, obviously. Then I've gone down screaming, like one of the lads behind me actually, to see my knee kind of make that movement that it does. The physio's coming running over, like he hadn't seen it, and I said to him straight away, I've done my cruciate. And he was like, what? I was like, yeah, I've done my cruciate. And yeah, when we got back into the treatment room, he kind of did a few tests, which kind of tell you whether you've done it or not, and he kind of said, yeah, I'll admit it doesn't look great, but we'll have a scan and we'll find out the real prognosis from the scan, really.
Yeah, that's got it. I mean, at that point, you've got to be, because you've, like you said, you knew, so he's got it. You've got to be, it's like almost like, in terms of football, it's the worst possible thing that could have happened to you at that point, because you just sort of, everything's coming together quite nicely. Like you said, you're feeling positive, and then of course this has happened. It's incredibly hard. Like, how much of, like, so when you first done it, and obviously when you've had your scans and your surgery and whatever, like, are you at that point just looking at getting back?
Yeah.
Or did you know early on that this was going to be a battle to get back at all?
No, like early on, I felt like when we had the scan, I got told that it was that basically, like, so when you obviously do your knee, you can either just do straight ACL, or you can do like you have medial cartilage and lateral cartilage, and I tore my lateral cartilage as well. So I remember going back to my left knee. I did the same with that, and it keeps you out for longer. Obviously, they have to operate on the lateral cartilage as well when they're doing when they're doing the operation for the ligament. So I kind of got told after the operation that it was quite a bad tear, but it wasn't one that no one was kind of worried about, and certainly I wasn't worried about it. But yeah, just kind of early days, the rehab was going quite all right, swimmingly. Kind of got back walking at a good time. The scars healed fairly well. And then round about 4 or 5 months, I really started noticing this massive kind of clunking sound in my knee. It was like, honestly, it was like laughable. Like the lads used to like come in and say, "Oh, Joe, show him that clunk in your knee," and it was quite painful. Really, my knee just used to, like, when I used to extend my leg out, my knee just used to make this big clunking sound.
Jesus.
So obviously, I knew it wasn't right, and I was coming towards a point where I probably should have been stepping the rehab up in terms of like plyometrics and jogging, but I just couldn't. To be honest, I was in pain, and the swelling my knee used to swell quite a lot, which says a lot. And yeah, I basically couldn't push on in the rehab. So the physio as well, he reached out to the surgeon, said to the surgeon who was over, regular 6-week checks with that I've developed this kind of clunking, and we don't really know what it is. So I mean, yeah, the physio was a really, really good. I mean, he's a good guy, he's a good physio. I got a good relationship with him. He's a top bloke. So he'd never heard of it as well. So I'd never really heard of it, and he'd never heard of it. So it was like, what is going on here? So I had the scan, and I got like a massive lump of scar tissue in my knee, like they call it, like a cyclops lesion. Okay. And they found out that I had more tearing in my lateral meniscus as well. So again, it required another operation. So yeah, I had the operation. But I remember the surgeon having, come and see me afterwards. I was really quite nervous, high on morphine. He came and see me, and I said, "How did it go?" Straight away. And he kind of came back to me and said, it was a little bit more complicated than what I thought when I was in there. So obviously that made me a bit worried straight away. He said, "Yeah, you had a lot of scar tissue and more tearing than what I thought you would have had in your meniscus. So I've had to take some out, which I know is obviously a good thing. I know it happens, but I know it's not a great thing in terms of like developing arthritis and for the good of your knee." So yeah, it was about then to obviously try to recover and get better after the second surgery more than anything. And then yeah, kind of had that second surgery. I'd again struggled with the swelling and the pain when I tried to step the rehab up. I ended up having 3 more injections, I think. And it got to a point where it was like, I can't push on in the rehab. I can't, I think I had a couple of jogs, but after a jog, my knee would swell, and the pain actually the next day after a jog was bad. I couldn't basically walk down the stairs. And yeah, I went back to see the surgeon, and was like, obviously it's creeping up to a year being out now. I'm kind of at a crossroads in terms of like, do I have can you operate on it again? Can I have an injection? And he just said that basically they can't operate on it again. They can't take more cartilage out my knee because it would affect my life other than football.
Yeah.
And he said that there's no more injection, so it's kind of you pray for a miracle, or you have to retire, and you have to retire on medical grounds because of your knee. So yeah, it was difficult news. I give it another bit of time. We give it like another 4 weeks. I got my legs to a point where they was so strong. The weights that I was lifting at the gym was actually scary amount. But my knee just couldn't tolerate outside activity. It couldn't tolerate jumping, running, sprinting. I couldn't even get to that stage. So yeah, I mean, it was difficult to take. It still is now. But like I said, it comes back to the point of having a good support system. Now you've got 2 kids now. The only gutting thing for me is that my little boy, my little girl have never really seen me play football, and that is the most difficult thing for me. I think that was one thing that I always kind of wanted to happen, certainly in the recent years, and obviously that won't happen or can't happen now. So I've got to make them proud in another way, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, mate, isn't it? Because like you're still young, aren't you? And I think I would imagine that like I don't know, like maybe it will get easier as you get past the kind of age where you could see. So do you know what I mean? Like at the moment, you're at an age where, in your mind, you think, well, I would still be playing now if I hadn't been for the injury. So maybe it'll get a bit easier to kind of get your head around a bit if like when you're like 40 or something, and you wouldn't still be playing if you get. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
But look, it's the way you've dealt with it and everything which you've had to go through and still had a stellar football career it's incredible, mate. And like that decision went from when they told you that you were you're looking at retirement, you're getting jacked in the gym, but that's got to be a weird feeling, mate, for you as well, feeling so strong physically, doing those weights, like doing this stuff that you haven't done before in the gym, but then not being able to go and do the one thing that you want to do. Like that's got to be a difficult one to get your head around, just from a point of view of you feel so strong.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
it almost doesn't correlate with your mind, if you get what I mean. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, like when I was doing the weights, the knee never felt great, to be honest. But it was never like, I'd never kind of thought that, I'm talking early on in the rehab here, that I never thought that it'd get to like the point where it has now. But I've come to learn that these things happen. The hardest, the more I looked into it, the more people I spoke to, the hardest thing to do that you put your body through is actually running, sprinting, and twisting and turning. And I never even got to that point. My knee wouldn't let me get to that point. Even now, I struggle going for a jog. I struggle, doing that kind of activity. Like I get offered to kind of play football with my mates, and I can't do it. So that's difficult as well, because it's not just your job and in terms of, but it's also like affecting you can't get into towards you affecting your life as well. I mean, when the time comes in my my little boy gets of an age and he's like, you know, come on, Dad, we want to play on the park and play football. I want to be able to do that. So at the same point, I'm still trying to get my knee to a point where hopefully I'll be able to do that. I think I'm quite optimistic in terms of that. That like, you know, that I'll be able to do that. Probably not regularly every day, but certainly, like, you know, if he asked me once a week, I don't think it should be an issue really. And that's, like I said, that's the most important thing for me. I think when the surgeon said to me, if another operation, basically he can't, like, he had no guarantee at all that it was gonna work. He was just basically gonna dive in for you know, just to, I don't even know. It was basically out of the question. It wasn't something that he wasn't even considering another operation.
Yeah.
He just said that, you know, basically that we've tried everything and we can't do any more.
Yeah, mate. Well, I would look. Whilst I was never a footballer, I can relate to the kind of last bit of what you were saying in regards to your children. Obviously, for people who don't know, I had a car accident in 2008,
Right.
which meant I ended up having some complications, and I had spinal fusion.
Right.
So a lot of the damage to my back is permanent. So at the moment, or now, I walk with a walking stick, but I spent about 2 years, maybe a little bit longer, using crutches and a wheelchair. And like one of the main motivations after I had the spinal fusion in 2013, I worked my absolute nuts off to get off crutches, and I used to have to use a wheelchair if I had to walk, you know, further than about 15 yards or something. So I worked my absolute nuts off after the spinal fusion to make sure that I could use a walking stick, because I knew that that'll give me some semblance of independence and stuff. But I was, as like, my wife will tell you that independence is totally important, because she was having to wash me and help me get dressed and all this mad stuff. But like, for me, I wanted to be able to take my kids to the park.
Yeah.
And I can't really kick a football, but I can throw a ball. I can play a bit of cricket, like throw a ball to them or whatever. Like, that means the
more
world to me. Oh, mate, it's unbelievable. And sometimes people will say to me, like, oh, I don't know how you can deal with it. But I'll say, like, from 2008 to 2013, I had all of it taken away.
Yeah.
I had like a little window into like what it would be like and what it is like for people who've got to, you know, depend on other people to dress them, to wash them, to not be able to do anything with their children at all. Like, and that was enough of a window for me. And like, I guess what I'm saying is, you being able to, and still working towards being able to play football with your son, is that's an awesome goal, mate. And at the end of the day, like, that's a really positive. It's a positive thing to look at, and I think if you can focus on that positive, as opposed to like the other side of it, which is obviously incredibly difficult for you. I wouldn't be able to. I don't know how I'd be able to deal with it, but you've been through so much. You've got obviously with Kaylee and your family, you've got so much support there, which is good. I've kept you so long, mate. I apologize.
No, I've enjoyed it, mate. Honestly, it's been great. I've fully enjoyed it. So it's kind of good to reflect, I suppose. It's
100%,
does the mind some good, doesn't it? I suppose.
100%, mate. And I've got there's a couple of questions which I finish off with, which are kind of just like random ones. But just before I want to ask you just one or two things quickly. What are you doing now? So obviously you finished with
so I'm working for a football agency company, representation company called GS Magna. Obviously, when I come out of playing, I got offered an interview with the company and started the job and absolutely loved it. You know, it's I think, like I said, I'm using my experiences from football in helping younger players and obviously still involved in the game in some capacity. So it's it's fulfilling, definitely fulfilling. You know, it's something that I'm really, really enjoying doing at the moment.
Awesome, mate. And I'm glad to hear that you're still involved in the football. And I'm
Cheers,
also
mate. Yeah, it's great.
exceptionally glad that you're in a position where you can advise like young footballers as well.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So, a couple of quick football questions.
Go on.
What is the maddest thing you've ever seen on the football pitch?
Maddest thing? Oh wow, racking my brain here.
Speaking to Paolo Di Canio in an
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah, could be. Maddest thing on a football pitch. Oh mate, off the top of my head, I don't know.
It's a hard one, isn't it? I just wondered if there was something which stood out. If you'd seen something crazy over the years.
I tell you what, we had a game against Bury when I played for Shrewsbury, and it was like Royal Rumble, mate. It was there was a lot of tension in the air, and yeah, that was probably the maddest thing I've seen.
Did they tie? Did they were giving you a bit of verbals?
Yeah, me and another one, and then it ended up like Royal Rumble at half time. Put it that way.
I like it. Yeah, dead passion, mate. Passion.
Yeah. That's what it is.
So I've been asking these two questions to all the guests for this series because I think it's a nice, light-hearted way to finish. So the first one is, where will Joe Riley be in 5 years' time?
It's interesting. Hopefully still doing what I'm doing now, and involved in football, which is obviously still a massive passion. Still the family man that I am, and hopefully get my knee a little bit better and I can lose a bit of weight first and foremost, which is important. But no, yeah, just basically just carrying on with what I'm doing now. I'm in a good kind of mental state now and in a good place with my family, and yeah, just continuing that. That's my first and foremost. You know, in my mind, what I think about is my family. So just putting them first, like I always do.
Good stuff, mate. I like it. And then the final question of the show, Joe Riley, what is the meaning of life?
To be happy. That's the meaning of life. Do things that make you feel happy. Be around people that make you feel happy. You know, obviously, like my experience in life, I've had, you know, quite a up and down last kind of 10 years, to say the least. But just doing things that put a smile to your face, being around people that put a smile to your face, I think that's what I can basically, the older I'm getting, the more I'm kind of doing is just being around people that bring out the good in you and being around. I enjoy being around my family first and foremost. So being around people that make you feel happy and enjoy life, I suppose.
100%, mate. Couldn't have said. That's just a beautiful way to finish it, mate. And I couldn't agree more. I got to say, first and foremost, Joe, thank you so much for your time, mate. It's been
It's great,
pleasure.
mate. I've enjoyed that, Simon. I really have.
I always enjoy speaking to you. The 2 times we've done shows now, I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. And do you know,
mate,
when Andy went on hiatus, I asked people who they'd like to see as a replacement co-host for the championship show, and you were the one which was suggested the most. So,
all right, brilliant.
There we go, mate. So,
I must be wanted in some capacity.
That's it, mate. 100%. But first and foremost, lastly, I wanted to say, if anyone has been affected by some of the stuff that we've talked about this evening, and what Joe's been through, I will leave some links to some charities and some helplines and things like that. And my DMs are always open for the podcast and my personal ones. But so feel free to drop me a message and stuff like that. But I will leave links to everything and stuff like that, because I know it can be difficult. But
yeah,
also,
no, definitely.
That's why we talk about mental health. We talk about you know, all sorts of different things on this series and on the channel generally, because at the end of the day, I think that if people understand that they're not alone and they're not the only ones going through things, it can only help, can't it?
Definitely, absolutely. So
yeah. Joe Riley, it's been a pleasure.
It's been mine as well. I've really appreciated that. It's been great.
Good man. Ladies and gentlemen, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll be back next Wednesday, and hopefully we'll be back on Monday for a My Story Extra with Joe live for you to ask some questions. But I will confirm that on social media over the next day or two. Until then, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
I got tons of soul, I'm a true collectible. Famous, so famous, #1 desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got tons of soul, I'm a true collectible. Famous, so famous, #1 desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got t-shirts, so I don't care about no gold. Better, so much better, flipping incredible. Always on the floor, so they know that I still got it. And I never feel sorry, yeah, top of the world. Top of the world. Yeah, top of the world. Top of the world. Yeah, top of the world. Top of the world. Yeah, top of the world. Top of the world. Yeah, top of the world. When I hear him come like a fuse and then ba-bum. Later, see you later, I'm about to blow this up. You can sing my song if you want, I know you want it. It's always kinda funny, yeah, cause you know I'm a superstar in the sky to leave you on. Haters gonna hate, it's a proof of how they
Cheers, mate.